In some of my previous videos, I've printed some airless basketballs out of this Ataraxia Art flexible PLA filament, and I've had some pretty good results with it, especially when you consider the price per basketball after everything is printed. I recently saw that Ataraxia Art has actually released more of their Bouncy Flex PLA, which is just a bouncy version of their standard flexible PLA that I've tried in the past. So my thought was to purchase some of the Bouncy FPLA and see how it compares against the regular PLA to see if it's really worth the extra price. Because as of this video, the bouncy version of the FPLA is $22 more than the regular FPLA, and we're going to do some tests to see if the B-FPLA is actually worth the extra money. So obviously the first thing I need to do is just print an airless basketball out of each filament. I'm going to start with the regular FPLA, and then I'll switch over to the bouncy FPLA, and we'll see how it goes from there. And whenever I'm printing an airless basketball, I always end up putting that filament, especially if it's flexible, in my dryer for several reasons. The first is because it actually dries the filament and keeps the moisture out. Another big benefit of the dryer is that it has some sliders at the bottom that really makes moving the spool around very easy so that it feeds really well into the printer. I also put a thick layer of 3D print bed glue stick on the print bed for both adhesion and as a release agent to release the basketball from the bed after it's done printing. First basketball I printed was the regular FPLA, and then the second one was the bouncy FPLA. Both of these airless basketballs were made with the exact same settings. The only thing I did was change the filament in between the prints. Next, I took the basketballs out to the garage and used my angle grinder with a sanding disc to just sand the supports off. After they were cleaned up and ready to go, it was time to weigh them before bounce testing, and the regular Flex PLA came in at about 593 grams, and the Bouncy FPLA came in at about 629 grams. Now it's time for the bounce testing. The regular FPLA is in my left hand, and the Bouncy FPLA is in my right hand. And after bouncing them a few times against each other, it almost looks like the regular FPLA actually bounces a little bit better than the Bouncy FPLA. I don't know if this might be a settings issue or maybe it's the weight difference between the two, but it really looks to me like the regular FPLA bounces just as well, if not maybe a teeny bit better than the bouncy version of the FPLA. Both of the basketballs were printed using a 0.6 millimeter nozzle, and I could not see any noticeable improvement in the bounce compared to the 0.4 millimeter versions I've made. But one thing I did notice about the bounce is when you're dribbling the B-FPLA, it does feel like it has more of a spring or energy return than the regular FPLA. One thing I wanted to do in this video was also compare the bouncy FPLA compared to some of the other basketballs that I've made. I'm going to start with this WizDream Flexi Tough filament because it costs about as much as the B-FPLA, and I've had good experience with it in the past. And after bouncing them against each other, it's pretty obvious that the WizDream Flexi Tough filament does have a better bounce than the B-FPLA. I'm not sure if it's just a difference in printing settings or the actual filament is better or not, but that's just what I've noticed in my testing. Alright, and the last comparison I'm going to do is against the best bounce and performing filament that I've tried and tested so far, which is the Kimya PIBA S filament. And once again, the PIBA basketball bounces better than the B-FPLA, but something to consider is that you are paying a lot more for a PIBA basketball than you are for this B-FPLA. And the last thing I wanted to test with this bouncy FPLA filament is just the durability to see if it can survive the 500 bounce durability test that I put most of the basketballs through, and it survived the 500 dribbles just fine. Eventually I'll take this filament and some other filament basketballs that I've made out to the basketball court to test the durability out there. If you do want to see some airless basketball durability testing on an actual court, I did make a video where I took a whole bunch out and tested them on a basketball court, and I'll link to that video so that you can see it. Well, after testing the regular FPLA with the B-FPLA as far as bounce and durability and performance, it doesn't really seem like it is worth spending the extra money to purchase the B-FPLA to make an airless basketball. It might have just been my printing settings I used, or even just the weight difference between the two basketballs, but based on my testing, it does not seem like the B-FPLA actually bounces any better than the regular FPLA that Ataraxia Art offers. Let me know what I should try next in the comments, but I do have some very exciting and promising filaments coming out in the near future for airless basketballs, so be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.